Okay guys, so I've done a reading vlog for most of Stormlight Archive up until Oathbringer, but I thought since we have both Edgedancer and Dawnshard that I should do a reading vlog for the shorter, I want to call them novellas, but they're still like 200, 300 pages, so they're still books, but I want to do a reading vlog for those two shorter stories in the set, so this is what this is gonna be. Hi guys, it's April and this is the start of my reading vlog for Edgedancer and then Dawnshard. I have gotten about probably not nearly the first third of Edgedancer. In this section, it was just the prologue, but it was the section that appeared in Words of Radiance. So it was just a recap, not even a recap. It was exactly the first time that we met Lift in Words of Radiance. We got to see her breaking into the palace. We got to see her using her awesomeness. We got to learn that she has been 10 for 3 years now. And then we also got to meet her Spren, Wendell. And now, of course, she is in the palace with the new emperor and all of that kind of fun stuff. So I just wanted to sit down and let you know that the first good chunk of Edgedancer is basically the same thing we've already read before. But from this point on, it should be all new stuff, so I will get back to you when I read that stuff. Okay, update. I'm about 2/3 of the way through the book now. Lift has decided to leave the palace, to leave Gox, to leave the Emperor, because they're starting to expect things of her, and the whole part of Lift's character is the fact that she never wanted to change. She didn't want people to end up knowing her because then there are expectations and she doesn't know who she's supposed to be. She's struggling with a lot of these questions on what it means to be grown up and finding your place in the world because she doesn't understand it and she doesn't want to understand it. She wants to keep in that simple mindset, which is why she went and asked for the request that she did, that she wouldn't change, the world could change around her, she would stay as she was, she would stay little, she would stay 10, and then she wouldn't have to worry about, okay, now that my belly's full, now that I'm comfortable, what next? That what next question keeps on scaring her. But she decided to leave the palace, and she keeps claiming that she's not chasing after Darkness, who is Nin, who tried to assassinate her earlier. But in reality, she has this plan in her head where she's slowly setting things up so that maybe she can confront him, because she knows that he's going around and assassinating people like her for whatever agenda he has, and that concerns her because the whole point of Lift is that she remembers those who have been forgotten. That is her oath as of right now. Wendell is paranoid that at some point she's gonna realize that he's a shard blade and he's gonna have to start hitting people. He's not looking forward to that because he's a cultivator. He had a garden back home. He had a garden of chairs and he was just getting into couches and sofas when all of this went down, which I think is just absolutely hilarious. But Lift has followed Darkness. She had this whole episode when she entered town where she had eaten grain and ended up kicking it over and giving it to the people in the slums. She claimed she wasn't trying to be altruistic. It was just a landing place. But there is a lot more to Lift. She doesn't want people to know. There's a lot more to Lift, and she kind of almost wanted to create the scene because she knew that Darkness would end up getting a hold of this information and come looking for her. At the same time, she ended up going to this orphanage to look for food. A lot of the street urchins don't really like the lady who runs the place because she's really mean. She doesn't know it yet, but she ends up meeting Wit there. And Wit starts conversation with her. They start talking about life and why this lady might be so mean to a lot of the urchins because she can't take care of everybody. And then there's some like deeper conversations about like what part of the body would you be, and Lift just throws out the nose. And then we have this whole scene where Lift ended up, through a series of events, hearing a conversation between Darkness and the assassin in white and everything that is going down there. And we hear a lot of things that lead up to things in Oathbringer and the return of the Voidbringers and all of that. And then at the very end of the section that I've read, Liv ends up back at the orphanage, and she's kind of reminiscing on a couple facts, like the fact that, you know, she can remember her mother, and she's one of the lucky ones that way. And then she has this second conversation with Wit, where she's asking him, how do you know? How do you know what to do? Did you get taught that? She doesn't understand. And Wit is like, so now we have Lift, who is pretending not to have ulterior motives to everything that is going down, when in reality she's kind of there hoping to protect whoever Darkness is hunting down. And it's going to be interesting because I didn't mention earlier, we had this whole run-in with Darkness, who was doing some searching in town, and there was another street urchin girl who stole food, and Darkness ended up killing her. And Lift has this moment of like uncomfortableness, and she's not about Darkness, and she doesn't understand why he seems to be thinking the way he's thinking, and she doesn't like it because she is the one who remembers those who are forgotten. I just finished Edgedancer, and want to correct myself. I talked about the fact that Lift was talking to Wit. I made the assumption that the kind of philosophy talk that was happening was because it was a Wit character. It's not. It was something a little bit more, something old, something not human. Everybody thought that this old philosopher was the light weaver that they were looking for in the city, and it turned out not to be. In fact, it was the head of the orphanage that Lift was a little not happy with because of just how mean she seemed. But if I back up a little bit, Lift had to get into the records building. Besides the fact that she can't read, she had to figure out a way that would let her have access to all this information. And through a little bit of a kerfuffle, she managed to get the Emperor to confirm who she was and then get them to help her go through the records. Didn't end up helping at all because the Everstorm ended up blowing through, which was confirming a lot of things that everyone was telling all of the leaders what was going on. And it was through that she heard about the old philosopher, met the old philosopher, and then realized that it was the orphanage head. And so she decides that she's gonna go and attempt to save her, because through all of this, Wit realizes that the biggest reason why she wanted to stay the way she was is because she wanted control. Because there's so many unknowns, and it made her slightly scared about the future. She wanted control. That was her big thing and why she had gone off for her request. But now she's starting to come to terms with the fact that she can make choices, and even though it seems really final, it's not a bad thing. So she ends up going and defending the orphanage and the orphan leader from Darkness. And luckily, neither of them ended up dying. She didn't really kill Darkness either, because she managed to get him to look outside and realize what was happening and that the Voidbringers were coming back, and that kind of brought the aha moment to Darkness. But through that, she also said the words. She went from remembering the forgotten to listening to the ignored, and in doing so, summoned Wendell. It just so happens that he's a fork. I mean, he's kind of disappointed in the fact that he's not this huge, majestic sword, but at the same time, he never wanted to hit anybody. So there's some things that he needs to come to terms with. But all of this to say that this left Lift realizing that she is okay with having some kind of direction in her life, which is how she ended up back with the Emperor. So I love Lift's story. I am now going to pick up Dawnshard. I believe this is the story of Rhysand at the end of Oathbringer, where she's gotten her ship. She's been gifted this ship. She used to be one of the record scribe keepers of the Queen. She showed up previously in a couple of other interludes where she was with her tradesmaster, and then through a series of events, she ended up losing use of her legs, but now she is on the ship, and I believe that is where Dawnshard takes off, so I'm excited. I've hit about the first third of the way through Dawnshard. So Rhysand, I don't know how you say her name, so I'm probably gonna say it multiple different ways. She has, what is the name of the Chiri. She has her little creature Chiri, who is starting to become a little sickly. So she needs to go to the Lost Island. Akina, I think is how you pronounce that. I'm gonna butcher these names because that's what I do. She needs to find this island because that is where Chiri is from. And she needs to take him back there so that things, right? Healing and all that kind of stuff. This is gonna be like her second trip with her crew, her ship. She isn't captain, so she doesn't steer. She doesn't technically like own the ship. She hasn't bought it or anything, but she commands it. And she's got a little bit of tension with the crew because everybody thought that the true captain was going to get the ship, but she didn't. She's now traveling with the patronage of Navani because they want to find this lost island as well. And we've also, of course, got a couple of the Knights Radiants on the ship as well. Now, here's the thing. Not everybody wants them to find this island. This island has been protected for quite a long while. We had an interlude in Oathbringer that I didn't know the relevance until right now when we're starting to get into this, that we had a ship previously who was trying to get to this island because one of the people on the ship wanted to not, her powers were making her disappear and she didn't really want that. But in the end, that whole crew ended up not existing anymore. And in the beginning of this book, we actually see that ship returning. We found that ship. It was a ghost ship. There was no one on board. And so now we are on the way to navigating to this island once again. We've got things that are trying to stop us from doing that. I do like how we are playing with disabilities in this story because Rhysand, she of course doesn't have mobility in her legs, but she's trying to find ways to improve her life. And she is starting to connect with people like her and finding a network and a support system that she didn't necessarily have before she decided to reach out for this support. So we also have a lot of different innovations for people without the use of their legs and how they can become more independent. And Rhysand herself is learning to not necessarily lean on so much support when she was first kind of wallowing in her disability. She is now becoming more independent, and she's still struggling with that feeling of inadequacy when people jump to help her when she didn't ask for it. and trying not to lash out because of some of that kind of stuff, and then trying to be the owner of this ship despite her disability. And it is interesting to see it. It's not the story I expected at all, but I am enjoying it so far. I am upstairs now because I have to feed all of the animals, but I'm a little over halfway through Dawnshard, and we have now learned that the one who has been creating all the havoc on the ship, trying to sort of create a mutiny, or at least make it so that people want to turn around, was actually Rysans, however you pronounce her name. It was her assistant. He hasn't outright come out and said why. He's just kind of still warning them that they shouldn't. All of this was brought on by the Horn Eater, who is actually the daughter of Rock, who is on this mission as well, kind of pointing out a few things. There are old gods who are made of cremlings, and it's kind of interesting now seeing how Edgedancer and now Dawnshard are kind of connecting with those cremling gods, because that was what the old philosopher was. So now to see that, seeing some of that old world come back into this new age. I'm gonna feed the animals. I got a few more things that I need to do, and then of course I will update you guys as I read more and finish. We are now 2/3 of the way through, and we have officially found the Lost Island. We went through a very interesting storm where Lopin ended up lashing everybody to the ship so that they wouldn't continuously keep falling off the ship. But now we see the island. There are gems everywhere. Cheery Cheery. We don't know how this is all gonna affect Cheery Cheery. Risen is hoping it helps, but we don't really have any closure on that side as well. So we are now about to explore the Lost Island. Hopefully, fingers crossed. So I just finished Dawnshard. We have made an agreement with the sleeping gods, who are the creatures who are made of cremlings, who are beings possibly from the greater Cosmere, who are just trying to protect the Dawnshard. Don't necessarily know what the Dawnshard is, but the Dawnshard is now in Rysand. Cheery Cheery is now back. He had disappeared for a little while, and apparently every so often Cheery Cheery is going to need to come back to the island for a little souping up. But the agreement has been reached with the sleeping gods that Rysand will continue to carry the Dawnshard as long as she tells no one about it and never bonds with a Spren, which is an interesting caveat. I mean, and before actually talking with the sleeping gods. We also finally got to see Lopin get his sword. Of course, it happened at the very end after everything had gone down, very much like when he bonded with his friend, very much in that vein. And he came to this resolution after his cousin hit that mark and got his sword while having to jump in and save Lopin, because that ideal is always about a little bit about protecting others, even those you hate, even if it's oneself or of other people or things like that. And it kind of came to light that some of Lopin's teasing can be mean, and acknowledging that but still wanting to protect Lopin is what gave his cousin his shard blade. But that also means that Lopin ended up thinking about his actions and how they affect people. And he's like, okay, so I protect them even from myself. And then, so he first started out as a dagger and then got a sword. These little stories are so very adorable. they have these little moments in them, but you also start to see the bigger connection that Brandon Sanderson is starting to set up. Because here we have the introduction of the Dawnshard and the possibility that it's got a greater importance in everything as a whole, and what that actually means, who knows? Oh, getting to this point, there's just something about the series that I really, really like. If you have been enjoying these reading vlogs, of course, subscribe down below, have the notifications on. Thank you for being on this journey with me. I hope it wasn't too boring. And leave a comment down below if you've made it this far. Otherwise, I heart your beautiful faces. Bye.